Hi everyone, JJ here with Experiences with My Dog, and we're finally in October, so that means that Halloween is not too far away. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the top things for you to consider for you and your dog during this Halloween so that you can have the best experience possible. So let's get right into it. So first up on our list is going to be chocolates and candies. For many of us, we're going to be trick-or-treating, or we're going to be handing out chocolates and candies to trick-or-treaters, or you're going to be having friends and family over. In any one of those scenarios, ultimately you want to make sure that you're limiting your dog's access to chocolates and candies. When it comes to both of those items, you're talking about a high level of toxicity to your dog. And the darker the chocolate, the worse it gets. And you can be looking at anything from vomiting to seizures to diarrhea to, in worst case scenarios, with heavy ingestion, you could even be looking at death. So this is extremely important that you keep this in mind and limit your dog's access to these items. Furthermore, outside of chocolate, you also want to be cautionary with a number of different candies and gum, because they can contain xylitol, which also has a very high toxicity level. So something to also keep in mind. Last but not least is that definitely a couple of days prior and during Halloween and a couple of days after Halloween, be conscientious of the fact that when you're walking your dog, you may see a number of different types of wrappers on the ground or around places that your dog normally frequents. In these type of scenarios, once again, you want to make sure to limit your dog's access to being able to ingest these wrappers and of course any of the traces of candies or chocolates that are on those wrappers. Number 2, if you currently keep your dog outdoors, I would consider bringing your dog indoors. During Halloween, there can be a lot of different types of sights, smells, and sounds that are new to your dog, and it can cause your dog to have stress and ultimately act in adverse ways, especially behaviorally. Some dogs also can be so nervous and so stressed out during that time period that if they have it available to them, they may escape, and so this can also be something to keep in mind. Beyond that, people during the Halloween time frame can sometimes use dogs that are out and about, or of course in a backyard, to play a prank on, and this is something that we would hate to see. So ultimately during this Halloween time frame, consider bringing your dog indoors. Number 3 goes along with number 2, and that's going to be that once you bring your dog indoors, you want to be conscious of the fact that you want to limit their direct access to the most frequently used door in your house, especially if that's the door where you're going to have visitors coming through, or you're going to get trick-or-treaters coming to, or you're going to get knocks and doorbell rings. Ultimately, all these things can once again be triggers for stress, especially if you have a younger dog or a dog that's still going through behavioral training. You want to minimize your dog having to respond to this continually. So go ahead and put your dog in a location where it's not going to be directly in line of sight, and hopefully minimize the amount of sound that your dog is going to receive from that location. This is also a great opportunity that if you have either a crate or an exercise pen, you could put your dog in those while you have your dog indoors during Halloween. Number 4 is going to be all about being prepared in the event that something happens to your dog or your dog escapes. So first and foremost, medically, you want to make sure to have your vet information on hand and up to date. If you don't have a vet, at least try to find one. And in addition to that, I'd also make sure to have the contact information for places like PetSmart, which have Bannafields, which have a vet. Now, majority of vets are not open 24 hours a day, but there are some vet ERs that are open 24 hours a day. So I would also make sure to have the contact information for the closest one. Beyond that, you also want to have the contact information for your local rescue shelter or animal shelter in the event that your dog gets lost and maybe somebody delivers your dog there. And last but not least, make sure to have the contact information for the ASPCA Poison Control Center. They also have a mobile application which you can download to help you in the event that your dog ingests something. So number 5 is going to be about decorations. For many of you, you're probably going to be setting up different types of displays and decorations in the front of your home, around your home, whether they're going to be different types of signs, or whether they're going to be different types of characters or displays, or things that are going to be powered by electricity. Ultimately, all of these things can be engaged upon by your dog. They can find them interesting. They can find them different. You don't want your dog to ingest many of these different types of displays, as they have different types of material that could cause huge amounts of problems requiring surgery. In addition to this, when you talk about exposed cords, dogs can chew on cords and dogs can trip on cords, especially if once again you got a young dog. This is something you want to limit your dog's access to. You can also help to safeguard them in the event that your dog's going to have consistent access to areas where you're going to have exposed cabling by getting some type of cable cover. You can get many of them at different types of utility stores like Lowe's or Home Depot or like Amazon. Number 6 is going to be about making sure that you have up-to-date information for your dog. So first and foremost, that comes through in terms of your tags. Whatever type of tags that you have for your dog, if they're present, make sure that they're clear and that they're legible. They contain the dog's name and a contact phone number. Many times dog owners don't realize that the tags actually slowly fade, or they get abrasion from other tags, and that can wear away the legibility. So if that has occurred, make sure to go ahead and get new tags. In addition to this, if your dog is microchipped, which we always strongly recommend, The great thing is that they last for 15 to 20 years, so you don't have to worry about that. But if your phone number has changed or your address has changed, you may have never updated that information on the Microchip website. So you're going to want to make sure and do that. Last but not least, you also want to keep in mind that if you've got a dog that potentially might be able to escape, whether you're talking about indoors or outdoors, or you just overall have concerns, there are a number of type of GPS-based tracking systems that you can get for your dog that easily affix to their collars. Number 7 is going to be about pumpkins and candles. For many of us, we're probably going to have some type of pumpkin display, or we're going to have candles out and about the house. In either one of these scenarios, be considerate of the fact that you've got an open flame probably in either one of these. When you have open flames, especially in colder regions, your dog might be interested in going up to them just because of the warmth and because it's flickering and something that's different. This could ultimately end up in a negative experience, as your dog could get burned. I would also be considerate of the fact when you talk about pumpkins, dogs really love pumpkins and they love fresh pumpkin. And of course, you don't want your dog to ingest too much of this. While it is very good for your dog, like most things, too much of anything is going to be a bad experience. So make sure to limit their access to any type of carved or exposed pumpkins or any type of exposed or lit candles. So last on our list is going to be number 8, which is all about costumes, whether it's going to be for your dog or whether it's going to be for yourself. So when it comes to humans, of course, during Halloween, you're going to have all kinds of people wearing costumes. You might be wearing a costume, kids are going to be wearing costumes, friends and family, trick-or-treaters. Whatever it might be, keep in mind that your dog could find seeing someone in a costume a very jarring experience, especially if your dog's never experienced Halloween before. It could adversely react in a number of different ways, either fearfully or even aggressively. So you want to try to make sure to limit their overall engagement of seeing people within costumes, especially when you're talking about costumes that might be covering people's faces, whether it's going to be face paint or whether it's going to be masks. If you yourself as an owner are going to, of course, be donning a costume, make sure to give some time to you and your dog so that your dog can come to essentially understand that you are in a costume, and use positive reinforcement to be able to create a positive bond between seeing you in this costume, and ultimately help to minimize the overall stress and shock that your dog might have in terms of seeing something change, especially when you talk about a lot of different sizes and shapes and even different sounds. A lot of these can be triggers for stress for your dog during this Halloween time frame when it comes to costumes. Now, when it comes to dogs, many dog owners during Halloween might want their dog to partake in terms of the Halloween spirit, and they might want them to wear a costume. But this might not always be the best choice. The main reason being is that, of course, not necessarily all dogs are comfortable wearing apparel for a number of different reasons. So let's go ahead and talk about a number of the different concerns and some of the different alternatives that you have when it comes to dogs and costumes. So first and foremost, be considerate of overall mobility. When you go about putting a costume on a dog, you never want to have its core mobility affected. So you want to be able to have the dog sit. You ideally still want to be able to walk without any type of impediment, even run. Of course, you want to be able to use the bathroom without any issues. And you also want to make sure that it doesn't affect any type of its ability for its mouth and essentially it being able to pant. As long as all of these things get checkboxed, I would say that you're okay to attempt to put a costume on a dog. At the same time, if your dog has never worn any different type of apparel before, it's not something you necessarily want to rush into, as it can take multiple times to get your dog to ultimately feel comfortable wearing something for a certain duration. So be considerate of the fact that it's not something you just want to throw on your dog without ever having your dog experience wearing some type of apparel. Now, when it comes to restrictions, we talked about mobility, but be considerate of the fact that different types of costumes sometimes can be restrictive in different types of ways. Even if they don't affect the different things that we talked about already, some dogs don't like having any type of restriction placed on, let's say, their paws or their legs. And you might have to find a costume that maybe just gets attached by wrapping around its belly as opposed to going through its legs. So this is something to be considerate of. You also want to be considerate of material and how that may affect the dog. Short-haired dogs, for instance, are much more susceptible to chafing. So you want to make sure the material doesn't chafe against the dog's skin. They can also have a lot higher level of susceptibility and sensitivity to different types of materials making direct contact with their skins. Long-haired dogs, you might have to take into consideration different things like natting, where if it's got Velcro and things like that, it could be problematic. So be considerate of that. Now, when it comes to the overall costume, once you've gotten your dog in a costume, of course, there's some other things to keep in mind. One is the amount of time that the dog wears a costume. I would ultimately limit this to between probably about 15 to 30 minutes and definitely never more than an hour. Make sure to give your dog a break. Also, make sure to have the dog always be supervised wearing a costume, as your dog will probably try to gnaw at it, maybe chew at certain portions of it, and ultimately, if it were to ingest this could cause severe issues and even require surgery in worst case scenarios. dangerous. So a couple of different things to ultimately be considerate when it comes to putting your dog in the costume and for the amount of time that it's wearing it. Now, there are some alternatives out there. One of the great things that I love are going to be different types of bandanas or neckties for dogs. You can get them in all kinds of different types of shapes and colors and different patterns to be able to celebrate this Halloween time frame. So if your dog isn't necessarily comfortable wearing a full costume, it's a great alternative that you have available to you. So that wraps up our video. If you've got any recommendations on things to keep in mind for you or your dog for Halloween, I'd love to see them in the comments section. Also, make sure to check out the links in the description for how you can get a hold of us on Twitter, our Facebook community, as well as our email. And also, if you have any recommendations on topics you'd like to see covered or products you'd like to see reviewed here on the channel, feel free and let me know that as well. As always, please make sure to consider spaying or neutering your dog. It significantly helps their behavior, their health, and overall control the pet population. So with that, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and happy Halloween.